All right, so I am going to walk you through a little bit of what is entailed in the lesson plan, which is the final project for this class, which you will be doing not in groups, as an individual, solo. And that currently is due on December 8th, but that is also, we'll see, right? So here's what we've got. We have got, if you go under the content section and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will find the final project academic lesson plan section, which has all these things in it. So you have a rubric, a template, which is a Word document, some things to help you plan out your lesson. We have a little bit on Bloom's taxonomy, which you may or may not have already figured out some stuff about. And then we have examples of how to set objectives for your lesson, which is important. And then we have also a lesson plan example of a really good lesson plan. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the template and the rubric with you just so you know what's happening. We may also take a look at the example, but we will be doing this also in Zoom meetings next week if you would like to join me for that. So here's what the lesson plan template looks like. Every section that is colored is basically a different section. So we're going to start with this purple section to begin with. So you're going to tell me, grade, content area, like 6th grade social studies, lesson title. Let's see, 6th grade social studies, something about why it's important to vote. And then you're going to tell me the state standards. So if you've done the content standards module, which I believe was week 8, technically, you will have some sense of what standards might apply. Also, we'll probably have to look some of those up. So, what state standards apply to this lesson? So, we'll probably be using the Common Core for most of that. That's the hard part sometimes of this section, so we can totally talk about that if you're confused. And then the context of the lesson. So, what kind of school is it? Where is it? What's the class size? So, this is up to you. You may choose any school that exists in the world that you'd like to pretend you're a teacher at. It can be a school you went to, a school in the area, it can be anywhere. Pick a school, a hypothetical, theoretical school. You're going to tell me, when does this lesson take place? Is it the beginning of the unit? Is it somewhere in the middle? Think about the diverse type of learners that you would have in your class. Like if you're modeling this off a real school, it's a good idea to check and see, do they have a lot of students with IEPs? What's the demographic makeup in terms of, socioeconomic status and things like that. And then, tell me about your classroom. What does it look like? Did you go with the standard rows of desks? Did you go with a U-shaped thing? Whatever it is that you decide to go with. And then, tell me what prior knowledge the students would have when they attack this lesson. If it's about voting, did you do, a whole big lesson on what democracy is before that? That would be something to tell me. And then what experiences might your learners have had relevant to this lesson? Maybe they had a class election at some point, so they sort of know what an election is. Yeah, basically that sort of thing. So that's pretty much the first part. And then the second part of it is your objectives. So what the student will be able to do when this lesson is over. What they will have learned how to do is what we mean by objectives. And then the next part of that is assessment. So tell me, how are you going to test them? How are you going to know whether they actually learned the material or not? And so we've given you a good sentence starter here. I will know each of my students learned the lesson objective above by, are you going to collect work and look at it? Are you going to give them a quiz? Are you going to have a project? What is it? And there's a hint here that what type of assessment you're going to use. There's some stuff about summative and formative, informal and formal assessments in Chapter 10, which I don't think we've read yet, so you may get to this part a little bit later. The next section is on differentiating instruction and the materials you need for your lesson. So the first part is talking about cultural differences you would expect in your classroom and like what you would do to support those differences. Note that we've given you a couple of chapters that talk about that to look back at. And then cognitive differences in learning needs for that specific age of learners. So that is mostly Chapter 4 and 5 stuff you can refer back to. How you will use motivation and affect theories to inform your lesson plan ideas for different needs of learners. That stuff mostly came from Chapter 6, so feel free to take a look there. And then list any materials that you're going to need, basically. So, do you need a whiteboard? Do you need cute little cutout things that students will play with and move around? Do you need a basketball? Like, what sorts of things you need for it? And then we get into the part that's really what most people think of when we think of lesson planning, where you write down what you're going to do and in what order. So you'll do an opening, which, should have a hook. That should get students, interested and ready to go. And then there's the engagement section, which a lot of this is covered in Chapter 8. What kind of instruction do you want to do? Is it going to be direct instruction? Are you going to have kids in groups doing cooperative learning? Please mention specifically 2 of the multiple intelligences you're going to try and address or engage in your lesson. And then closure, which will be how do you wrap all this up at the end of the lesson. You have some thoughts here about how to make that happen too. So that's what the template looks like. It's not a lot. It's not as scary as you might have thought. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's on the rubric. Here it is. Excuse me. So, once you have determined what you want to teach, theoretically, and if you don't ever plan on being a teacher because you're a different major than education, that's fine. Just pretend for the purposes of this that you might be a teacher. And pick whatever content area you'd like to focus on. And then you're going to write the lesson plan and the lesson plan template. And then you're going to upload your assignment by the due date. It says Sakai, but obviously that's Brightspace now. And then, so basically you just do what's on the rubric. So, it's really more of a adds up points kind of thing. So basically, if you chose a grade and a contact area, right, and got yourself a good title, that's 3 points. If you've listed 1 or 2 of the standards, and there are lots of places to find those, right, then you'll get a point. If you, give me context of the lesson that I asked for, like the school location, the demographic info, that sort of thing, that's worth 4 points. Mastery objectives, and this touches on universal design for learning, which you had a module on. So you're going to list some objectives about the specific things that students will be able to do or demonstrate as a result of your lesson. So here's some things to think about when you're writing those. Those are worth 3 points. And then assessment also kind of goes back to the universal design for learning ideas. So tell me how you're going to find out if the students have mastered your objectives up here. They could be formative or summative assessments. They can be formal. They can be informal. Please tell me what type of assessment it is when you describe the assessment. And then that is Chapter 10 stuff. So you may not have read that yet, which is fine. You'll get to that a bit later. That's worth 3 points. And then differentiating instruction, right? You should probably include at least 2 vocabulary words from the text. Underline those so I can tell them right away, please. And, there's a few different categories you can look under. That's worth 8 points. And also the materials list goes along with this. So those 2 things are worth 8 points. Instructional procedure opening. if you have a good description of an opening activity that gets everybody interested and a good hook, let the kids know what they're learning on that day, tell us what the purpose is, that's going to be 2 points. And then instructional procedure and engagement, again, thinking back to UDL, it should be a step-by-step outline of how to do your instructional objectives. So what's going to happen in the lesson plan and in what order, basically. So definitely tell me what instructional method it is. Like, is this direct instruction? Is this cooperative learning? Please underline that. And this is also where you'll talk about the multiple intelligences that you're going to be touching on, which, you should be at least 2 of those. That's worth 4 points, all of that together. And then the last section on the closing is, you are describing how you're going to close it out, like summarize what you learned, connect back to something else, whatever it is that you need to do. Sometimes the closing is the hard part, to be honest. But your description of that will gain you 2 points. So all told, it's out of 30 points. Okay, so going back to this, we've given you some things up here too about differentiating instruction and also how to write objectives. So there's some videos you can watch to help you figure that out. And then examples of what objectives might be, Bloom's taxonomy. And then here is an example of what it all looks like when you're finished with it. So you're going to just write what you're doing right there in the template. So this was a grade 5 math. Adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators is what the title is. Also fun, which, I don't know, it kind of sounds fun. But you can kind of just look over this in your own time and see how she wrote it out. You'll note that, no one box is just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of information, right? Until you get here, right? These boxes up at the top, she gave us a good size paragraph for the answers, which is great. And then, bullet points for this part is fine. But then once you get down here for the instructional procedures, that's really where you'll need to get a little bit more in depth. Like, you'll notice that this person told me they're going to play a game called Math Skitball, and that is a type of cooperative learning. So this is the sort of thing you're going to write here. And then they described how Math Skitball works for me. Right? And then the closure, you're going to get some homework. They're going to complete an exit ticket, right? That sort of thing. So feel free to look back at this whenever you need to kind of remember maybe some of the wording that could be used, or, how you might do this lesson plan. So that's roughly what you need to know for the lesson plan. We are going to talk about this in more detail if you need in the Google meetings that you can sign up for. If you want to discuss it with me or brainstorm different ideas or run any questions by me. So that's pretty much it. That's the beginning of the lesson plan. I'm going to put all this in an announcement so that you know it exists and that you're working on it this week. But I think that's basically it. All right. Peace.